Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. So this is the second interview in our series on living legends of the energy industry in Trinidad and Tobago. It came out of events and an understanding of that I didn't realize that it was only in the 1960s and 70s we really had local professionals leading geoscience teams, engineering teams. A lot of the work, when we say the industry has been around for 100 years, was done by foreigners. Right? So
That's correct. Yes.
You were among the first pioneers. So what we wanted to do was capture that, right? Capture the stories, capture your early, why you chose to do geology, right? What was your early career like? What were some of your biggest successes as a geologist in the field?
Okay.
And then the last part of the interview will be looking at the future, right? Where are we in terms of a mature oil and gas basin? And what advice you would give to geoscientists, someone who's 18 thinking about going into geoscience? What is some of the advice you would give them? So, past, present, past, your career, and the future. Right, so we'll start. By knowing someone's history and understanding where they came from, you understand what they're saying now. And so I think it's important for us to capture these people who made big changes or who were in the industry for a long time. So that people who come forward will know, okay, this is what it was like before, this is what it's like now. And it's to encourage young people to stay involved, stay engaged, get involved in the energy industry in Trinidad. So yeah. My name is David Gabriel, right? I'm a geophysicist currently with Heritage. I'm a director on the GSTT. And
nice
you are same here.
And you're your dad.
Yes. You were my father's boss.
I was?
Well, no, I think you were at Trinidad, right?
I was at Trinidad.
Yeah, you were at Trinidad. He was at Trinidad. Everybody knows your name in the oil and gas industry. So this is Dr. Krishna Persad. Thank you for taking this opportunity to do this for us. We're really, really pleased to be able to interview you and to talk about your life in the energy industry. So, so let's get going. So my first question is, why did you study geology?
Well, I actually was on a Texaco scholarship in 1963 to go to Mona to do chemistry.
Okay.
But because of my combination of subjects, I was going to be doing chemistry to keep on as the major, and the subsidiaries would be zoology and botany, which are done in A-levels and scholarship A-levels. In A-level, well, in those days it was higher cert. Okay. But I never liked botany too much. Okay. And a friend of mine, a friend of the family, who had just come back from UE doing chemistry special, we were chatting and she said, well, why don't you consider geology as an alternative to botany?
Okay.
And if you don't like it at the end of the first year, you could drop it and continue with the chemistry.
Okay.
And that's how I started with the geology. So I said, well, I've already registered for botany. She said, don't worry, when you go up there, you just go and apply and show them your grades and they will accept you, which they did. So that's how I started doing geology.
Right.
At the end of the first year now, I came back at the beginning of the second year, and the geology professor said, would you like to switch to geology special?
Okay.
We are going to start the program this year. We were going to start it with a student in first year, but we would start you in second year. Okay. So you wouldn't lose a year. Right. And from this year and next year, all you would be doing would be geology.
Okay.
So I said, well, okay, sounds interesting, but I would need to talk to Texaco
Right, because they set
because
the
I was
program.
on a Texaco scholarship.
Yeah.
So they say, okay, take your time. So I in those days, there was no phone. You had to write. So I wrote Texaco, and they wrote back and said, go ahead, no
Fine.
worries.
Okay.
So I did.
Okay.
It was only afterwards I realized that at the end of the first year, I had won the first year prize in natural science, and I had come first in all the subjects, including chemistry.
Wow.
And 20 years later, the geology professor, the chemistry professor, were still arguing that I had stolen his best student.
Right.
That was Professor Layla.
Okay. Okay.
But so that's how I ended up doing
So
geology.
happenstance. You started off with botany,
Right,
zoology,
correct, yeah.
right?
And I like the geology.
Geology special though. What does that mean?
Well,
What did that mean in your
basically,
case?
it was a program where after the first year, all you studied was geology.
Okay.
So I had to do like 10 exams, 5 theory, 5 practical,
Right.
all in geology.
Okay, wow.
They've switched around the programs, so that doesn't apply too much anymore.
Okay.
Um,
So how long was your program? And
the program was ended up being 3 years.
Right.
So I came back and started to work for Texaco. But I said to them, I say, I advised that I was going to get an offer of a scholarship from UE to do postgrad.
Right.
And they said, look, if you want to leave and you get the scholarship, we will release you, which they did.
Okay. So they released you from the commitment of the Texaco
From my
scholarship.
commitment. But they said, hey, when you come back, we can't guarantee you a job.
Okay.
So I did my PhD in geology. I did field work in Antigua, where the earlier match was played today, the cricket match. In Antigua and Antigua limestone, I did the micropaleo and the geology.
Wow.
So I could have come back and started to work, which in the lab, which I was working before, the paleo lab.
Okay.
I had started off in the paleo lab. But when I came back after doing the PhD, they said, we don't have any jobs.
Right. In paleontology.
At all.
At all. This was in what year? 1968?
This was in 1970.
Okay, 10
years.
years.
This was in March
7 years
1970.
Wow. Okay.
I finished the bachelor's in 66. And so I checked around, and Trinidad Tesoro interviewed me and offered me a job, and I started to work for them instead.
Okay. So 1971, Trinidad Tesoro.
That was 1970.
1970, Trinidad
They had
Tesoro.
started in 1969, a year earlier.
Right.
Almost a year.
It was the
joint venture.
BP
it was a joint
Trinidad.
venture between the former assets of BP, jointly owned by the government, and Trinidad Tesoro, Tesoro Petroleum, which was a company based in San Antonio.
Okay. So
I worked with them as a geologist for 2 years. Then I was transferred up to San Antonio.
nice.
At my request, I asked them, I said, hey, you're doing exploration programs. I would love to get some training. So they did. And I went to all their district offices and did exploration programs.
Wow.
Throughout the States and Canada.
Okay. So Tesoro was operating in Texas and where else?
In Texas, Colorado, Houston, Texas, San Antonio, where I was based, New Orleans, Louisiana, and Calgary. I went to all the offices and did exploration.
So it's kind of like what they do with the graduate program here in Trinidad, where they send you to all the departments to learn in different fields.
Except I was international and doing.
Wow.
That was
the
a great
first person from Trinidad to do that?
I was the first one.
Wow.
There were a couple others. Mahindra went after.
Okay.
Many years after, I think.
Okay.
But
What was that like?
that
As a
was
Trinidadian going to
fabulous.
Texas in the
That was
1970s.
great. 1972.
Right.
I bought a Volkswagen bus, which
Oh,
we
what
used
did you
to
do
call
with
the
that?
hippie bus.
Right.
I put on like 20-something thousand miles on that.
So you just road trips every weekend after
Well,
work?
no, not only that. When I had to move from one base to the other,
Okay.
I drove instead of flying.
Right.
It made the most sense. Transport while I was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I came back as the senior exploration geologist in Trinidad Tesoro.
Wow.
And then in 74, of course, Trinidad had been bought over, Shell had been bought over by the government, and they
became
created
Trinidad.
Trinidad.
Okay.
And in 76, they were looking to start a geology department,
Okay.
and they were looking for a geologist. So I went to them and I said, well, you don't need a geologist, you need a geology department. I would come on board if you want me as your exploration manager.
Okay. So you created an opportunity for yourself, right?
But I had done the same with Tesoro. I had done the same with Tesoro.
Right.
And they said, well, all right, we don't want an exploration manager, but we'd hire you as chief geologist.
Understood.
And so, in fact, after a couple of years, maybe 3-4 years, I hired Wade Bertrand and his wife to work with me. I was their chief geologist, and they were my senior exploration geologist, senior geologist, and senior geophysicist.
I heard his wife was a geophysicist too.
Correct.
Wow. So you got 2 in 1. Were they local then? Because I heard that they came from abroad.
No, they came.
You brought them as expats. Okay, you brought them back. They came back.
I had interviewed them a few years earlier, and then they came back.
Oh wow, that's excellent. That's excellent. So 1970 finished your degree, 74 with Tesoro, and then
70 to Tesoro, 70 to Trinidad Tesoro, 70 to 76 with 2 years in Tesoro in the States. And then in 1979, I believe it was, they wanted to do an assessment of the resources in Trinidad.
Right.
And while I was with Tesoro and Trinidad, I found a lot of oil for them.
Right.
Yes. A lot of oil.
Right.
But it was when I went to Trinidad, they said, we need you to find the resources in Trinidad for us.
I said, I can't. When you say that, you mean?
The geological and petroleum resources.
Right.
I said, I can't do this alone. I need a team.
Right.
And I brought in a team. I say, I want to bring in
these people,
the best from all over the world.
Wow. Okay. And so there was that much prospectivity that they believed.
Oh, yes.
Right. So where was Trinidad? Just a general question. Where were we on the scale of oil and gas?
Well, in 79,
70 to 70.
76, Amoco had started production. We had gone up to 200 and something thousand barrels a day.
Jesus Christ.
We were about a couple 100,000 barrels a day at the time.
Wow.
Trinidad was about 50 to 60,000 barrels a day.
Right. So were we the biggest oil producer in the Caribbean at that point? Or out of the entire archipelago?
We only until 2 years ago when
Guyana,
Suriname is now starting, but.
And where were we in relation to Venezuela? Were we comparable?
We were very smaller now. Venezuela was 3 million barrels a day at the time.
But this would have been a good opportunity when you approach these guys to say, come in and...
Well, I brought in geophysicists, I brought in biostratigraphers, I brought in geochemistry people.
Okay.
Well, they didn't come, but I sent stuff to them.
Right, okay.
And we did a 1-year study, basically, on the petroleum resources of Trinidad. And I took the opportunity to rewrite the history of petroleum geology of the country at the time.
Okay.
And so I wrote the precursor to the book I eventually published
Yes,
in
I've read that
2011.
from the Bible.
The precursor was in 1984. I got permission from the ministry because the companies didn't want to give me permission to publish. They say it was confidential. The ministry said, we will give you permission. So they did.
Right.
And they, on the basis of our prospects, we generated 11 big prospects for them.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of them 100 million barrels plus.
Right.
They found what is now called the Jubilee Field.
Okay.
And then they found the Southwest Soldado Field.
Right.
Those were the two biggest discoveries that they made.
Right.
Jubilee Field was 2 billion barrels of heavy oil in place.
Right.
The Southwest Soldado is about 2 billion barrels of oil.
Okay. And that came out of that study you generated.
That came out of that study we generated.
Go in there, we have this static oil in place.
Yeah.
These are opportunities.
And in the study team, we had people from the ministry, people from Trinidad, people from Texaco, people from Tesoro.
All of the companies that were
they all said
involved.
We wanted to send at least one person to understudy and be part of the team.
Okay, but that has become a tradition within the industry now of having
subsequently. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Having these studies of
So when I came back, Wayne Bertrand had been acting chief geologist for a year.
Right.
And he got transferred.
At
Trinidad. He got transferred sideways to chief petroleum engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was chief geologist, and the technical manager was due to retire in a year, and he was the blue-eyed boy. I realized, hey, next thing I know, I will be working for Wayne Bertrand, and I had hired him to work for me.
Yes, sir.
I said, you know what? I'm out of here.
Right.
So
new opportunities about.
I went to a very small company, Premier Consolidated Oilfield.
Oh, wow.
And I said to them,
this is a
sell me
private
shares.
leasehold operating company.
Yeah, they were, how should I put this? They were a branch of a public company in England.
Okay.
I said, sell me shares and I come and work for you.
Very clever.
And they said, okay. So I came and I started to work. And I carried them from 200 barrels a day to 1,000 barrels a day.
Oh. In what space of time?
In about 5 years, just over 5 years. But then the government changed. And my...
your good partner, Mr. Manning? Or?
No. Robinson became prime minister.
Right. 1986. Right.
Late 1986. And he said, they called the then Minister of Energy, his portrait is on the other side, said to the chairman of the company, we're not going to force you to localize anymore.
Okay, what does localize mean?
Just sell shares.
Okay.
If you want to stay 100%, you can stay.
Right, 100% privately owned, external foreign owners.
So we walked out of the office and he looked at me and he said, Krishna, I am not going to sell you shares anymore. That arrangement gone through the window. So I got upset. I started a fight. Next thing I know, hey, you can't fight with the boss. You're out of here. They fired me.
Private company.
So I went to my wife. I said, you know what? I am going to start my own company. I'm going to start a consulting company.
Well, the phone, you lose your job after 15 years in the industry and you decide I'm going off on mine. And he said, you're crazy. Accept the job of lectureship. I was being offered lectureship in Mayagüez, University of Puerto Rico as a lecturer. Right. I said, nah, I could do it. You have this.
You're crazy.
You have this thing running in your blood now. You
went to Frankie Khan, who was my friend. He wasn't a minister at the time yet, but he was pretty high up in Tesoro at the time, and begged him,
Give him something.
It's madness. No, let him go and accept his job. He wanted to do his craziness. Frankie never told me at the time.
Okay.
But he never came to me until long after. He said, the reason I did, he said, I knew you would have, that's what you wanted to do, you would have succeeded. Yeah. And so I did that. I started consulting. And in 2 years' time, I did 2 multi-client reports on Trinidad on bid rounds, which were marketed and sold. I made more money than I had made.
So the process
I had
was
more money
bid round
saved.
comes out, and then I do the geological.
And they were marketed worldwide to all the oil companies.
Oh, wow.
And at the end of the 2 years, I had enough money saved in a foreign bank in Switzerland. 250,000 US. In those days, you couldn't even get $1 US.
Correct. So you needed a foreign account to put the money into.
I was able to persuade
other
Trintoc and Trintopec. No, I didn't have any other investors. Trintoc and Trintopec to offer farm outs and lease operatorships and stuff. The industry had crashed.
Yes.
And
that was the oil
farm out block. I got a farm out block and started being an oil producer. Then I became the first local independent oil producer. And then in 1995, I bought the platform, Mora platform from Amoco, and became offshore, became the first local offshore independent oil producer.
Wow.
And I bought other oil fields and sold in the meanwhile. Now last year I just sold all the rest.
You sold everything.
I sold everything. So I'm going to start in a couple of months' time to get some more. But
don't mind me, but Krishna, you've been in this, what? You said 1970?
1970 I started.
Years. And you want to continue? What's the driving force for you now?
Well,
what gets you?
When I sold Barakpur, which was the last oil field I owned, I said, I give up. I always liked to paint. I wanted to be an artist. I want to be the best artist I could become. So I had done these portraits before, but then I said, the portraits weren't enough. I wanted to see, I knew I was good at portraits, but I wanted to see if I could do the rest. So I started to do, I did 4 sets of paintings, had about 4 exhibitions. I did history of energy, paintings on the history of energy. I did paintings on the history of Tobago. I did paintings on Guyana, where we went to Guyana. So, but by the end of last year, near the end of last year, you know what? Time to get back in the oil industry.
So when did you sell the Barakpur field? That was your last one?
3 years ago.
Okay.
3 years ago. Okay. But in the meanwhile, there were other things I did as well. In the 60s, after we got independence,
yes,
the government started to signal its intention to do away with the expatriates.
Right.
They started to leave in droves.
Right. How was that signal sent? Or was it?
I don't remember.
Yeah, but the expats started leaving because the company started leaving. BP left, Shell left.
BP left, Shell left, and then this government started to localize and started to hire locals.
Right.
So there was an association called the Petroleum Association of Trinidad and Tobago. There was never a Geological Society.
Okay.
So in the
this is the birth of the GSTT.
The birth of the GSTT. Right. I said, we need to form a Geological Society. But then I left to go to the States for 2 years. And all the people I had organized.
Who was this person?
I was working in Tesoro. I was working with Tesoro.
Right.
But I talked to a few of my colleagues in the industry.
Local guys.
Local
Professionals, yes.
And they say, yeah. I said, okay, while I'm gone, do this A, B, C, D, E, F. They said, right. I came back 2 years later, nothing was done. Nothing. So I said, okay, now is the time.
Right.
So I was still with Tesoro.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to organize everybody. And Mahendra was a young geologist who just come. I was training him. I said, one of your training is to help me.
Right.
So, and that's how I got everybody on board.
Mm-hmm.
Ken Butchwood was my boss.
Right.
I said, Ken, you are going to be the first president of the society. He said, Krishna, that don't make sense to me. You are the person organizing this whole thing. You should be the first president. I said, no, Ken.
No, we need
what you need.
Power.
You need somebody with the name and the power.
Yeah.
So he understood. So we installed him as the first president. And I was actually installed as the first past president because we needed a past president according to the society, the constitution.
And that continues still today.
And then the next year I became the first president.
Okay.
The second president after that.
Okay.
And that's how the society was born.
Okay.
In 1976.
Okay. Wow, 1976.
August 1976.
All right. So what was the prime objective of that first cadre? What were you trying to achieve with
so
the
that we could have meetings and exchange information among the local geologists
and
professionals and get them to interact and have
social
meetings.
Meet and so I'm gonna get onto a big topic here, right? So we're talking about data, right? In the previous interview with Dr. Neil in academia, he spoke about the availability of data, but I will come to the people first, right? So the GSTT was formed as an organization for professionals to meet and share information.
Right, and network.
Right?
And we used to have
I think that has
every
changed.
month.
I think that has changed. In your time, how much information was shared?
Well,
in terms of technical information, I give you an example.
In terms of technical information, we had to get permission from the companies and pre-present the papers to them before they would allow us to present
publicly.
Right. But, it's one thing to publish, but another thing to release raw data.
Interesting. What's the difference for you?
Well, it's an interpretation.
Okay.
It's an interpretation, which is yours.
Right. So the maps, the structure maps, the oil.
That's your data.
That's your work.
Right.
I can give you the raw data.
Right.
With your own interpretation and your
correct.
Own.
So there is still, up to this day, a big issue with availability of raw data.
Right. So, and I'll move on to another point. So,
it's always been a problem.
Always been a problem. The release of raw data. From the ministry.
Well files, well production information, stuff like that.
You run a local oil company. Why is that information so critical to an oil company that's competing in a basin such as ours?
Well, the more data you get, the better your chances of success.
Right.
And if you fail as a geologist in a block, for instance, nobody will know whether you failed because there was no oil there, or you failed because of your incompetence, or you failed because you didn't have enough information
to come
to the correct conclusions.
Okay.
And what generally happens then, if you fail, more likely than not, the company would sell the block or farm it out.
Right. Okay.
Take Galeota, for instance. I had worked the Galeota field. Mahindra had worked it after me.
Right.
I had proposed all the exploration wells for the other platforms that were eventually drilled and produced, 40 million barrels of oil. I had said, the block has 100 million barrels of oil.
Right.
But while I was there, after the first platform, Tesoro brought in an exploration manager who drilled 3 dry holes.
On the same data?
On the data. And just the end result was the block was farmed out.
Right. Understood.
The block was farmed out.
So the impact of...
And eventually was sold.
Of sharing data.
The impact, well...
And knowledge.
I believe it was incompetence, but the guy is long gone, so I could say what I want.
All right, so we've kind of looked at your early career,
right?
And it is impressive, right? You've studied, you worked among a series of companies very quickly, I might add.
Well,
and then you came into a position where you decided to form your own company, which is amazing.
Before we start that, I should say that in 1979 we had hosted a geological conference in Trinidad, and I was the general secretary of the conference. I was in charge of the conference. And after that, I said, we need to have an annual conference.
Okay.
And I started the Geological Society under the auspices of the Geological Society, an annual conference which ran from 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86.
Right.
However, in 87, when Premier had fired me, the then president of the society said, we are no longer interested in this.
Okay.
And he said, sotto voce, this conference is tainted by you. You were fired.
Wow.
So I went to the South Chamber. I said, this is what's happening.
Okay.
Let's do it together.
Right. South Chamber of Commerce. Right.
So we did, and we started it. And in fact, that first conference was when we promoted the idea of operatorships and farm outs.
Right.
And Leonard Lewis was there. He was head of Trintopec at the time. He said, Krishna, don't worry, we are listening.
Right.
And it was on the basis of that they had started that.
And this became the Energy Chamber.
Became the Energy Chamber Annual Conference.
Okay.
So whenever I go, the DAC driver says, this is the man who started this conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and I think as much as me starting an oil company, things like this are equally or just as important or more important,
very important
for the country to develop.
Yeah. So there was a shift from technical data to business. How do we commercialize? How do we bring different players into the business? Right.
That's what I did in 1980 with the Geological Society, because people had come to me and said, we want information, we want data to send back to be able to plan our budgets and stuff.
Right.
And that's when I started the Energy Conference.
Yeah. The Energy Conference is
and it's grown to be huge now.
What do you think makes the Energy Chamber such a force in our industry today? Such a force in the decisions that are made. We have ministers
they are lobbying. They are lobbying a lot.
Okay.
Which is good and which is correct.
Right.
And which, to my mind, the Geological Society has dropped the ball.
Yeah.
The GSTT should be lobbying as much or more.
Okay.
At least as much.
Yeah. So
the government.
So how do you? So this is one of my last few questions. We've rolled through all of my questions, but asking you them, what can we as the GSTT do going forward to have more of an impact on Trinidad, to change
sad to say,
how things are currently and how they will be in the future?
When I had gone to the chamber, I asked them after a year or two to bring back in the Geological Society
right,
as partners. So for several years, GSTT was partners
right,
with the Energy Chamber,
okay,
but they weren't doing anything.
okay,
They just sat there, collected half the money, and said, thank you very much. So after a while, the Energy Chamber said, So I think the GSTT missed the boat there.
How can we get back on the boat now?
Well, I don't think you can get back on that boat. That ship sailed.
Okay.
That ship sailed.
So what are the strengths
However,
of the Energy Chamber that you see right now? What makes them...
All right. Let me... GSTT should have an annual geological conference. And in the annual geological conference, it should be looking at acreage that's open and saying, hey, these are the blocks that are open. This is the potential in the blocks.
This is the data.
Right? Even if you don't have all the data,
this is the
you will have enough.
Right. Right. So it becomes geology as a business opportunity.
Geology as a business opportunity.
Right.
This is the exploration potential.
This, yeah.
Let's get after it.
Right. Oh, the
government. All right. The government is offering bid rounds. When I was there, I was on my own. I went and did multi-client reports, which I sold.
Valuations.
Right.
So that's a source of income for us then.
That's a potential source of income. You hire people and you say,
and you do the
evaluation. The way it worked then, the company, there was a worldwide consulting company, I forget the name. They say, after the first five, we get the first 5.
Right.
We share the other 5 50-50. You do the drafts, we will neaten it up and we will market it worldwide.
Okay.
And they did. And that's where I got the 250,000
The first 5 what? When you say
first 5 copies that were sold, they got all the money.
Oh, okay. And the rest is...
The rest. Half and half.
Okay. So it's a joint venture.
And it was a joint venture.
Okay.
And they reaped their rewards from the first 5 and then half of the rest.
Okay. But that data was
very well
available to you, like the well files, the production, that information.
I used what I had.
Understood.
Remember,
from your previous experience. Yeah.
Not only that, I had written the book already on the petroleum geology. So I knew the blocks.
Understood.
And now,
so that's a way
let's talk about the potential.
Okay.
The potential still is huge. Yeah. We are a mature oil and gas province. Correct. However, we are mature in some areas, not in all.
Understood.
We are mature onshore and nearshore.
Right.
What about the deep water?
Right. Yeah.
There are no wells in the ultra deep water.
Understood.
None.
Understood.
But you ask the people who have studied it, and you all should know, the source rocks are just as present in the deep offshore, shallow offshore, and onshore. They are there. They are mature. They are still oil and gas prone.
Yeah.
When you do the maths, you're looking at 4 billion barrels of oil and
possibly
50 TCF of gas.
Possibly.
Potential.
Yeah, in place. So
that there's an opportunity for the GSTT to
do this work.
To do it, hire experts and do it. Go to the ministry.
And
the ministry had worked closely with me, and they always helped me along the way. It released whatever information they could to me.
Yeah.
What even more, if they couldn't, they would help market by giving
Take the
out
report.
cards and stuff. People come and say, we want to find out. No, we want to find out about
Block
the
3.
potential.
Block
They say, hey,
25,
go to Dr. Persad, he has written reports.
Right. Yeah.
And you
Simple.
talk to the ministry, collaborate with the ministry, and if the reports are good, you could say to them, we will prepare the reports and you will sell it, and we will get the money.
But I like the idea.
You will get the information correct information to sell.
Understood.
So those are opportunities that the GSTT
needs to capitalize on. We have to move from being technical experts. Yeah.
Our annual conference
to look at those opportunities.
Yeah, and then you say, this session is going to be devoted
to block so and so and so.
Or this whole morning, or this whole day, or whatever it is, devoted to the upcoming bid round.
Right.
Or to the bid round that just went.
Right.
And that was disappointing.
Right. Because I don't know if, I think from what I have seen in the 5 years at Heritage, the information is given to the companies for a short period of time for them to evaluate and make their...
You could say to the ministry, give us that information, and we will add our knowledge and our local expertise to that as well. Come up with reports to sell.
Right. Understood. So Dr. Persad, I love the way that your mind is still working, you know, and and I think what is interesting is that I do it as well. I think of it as, I'm doing geophysics and this is what I do. But no, you have to think about the business and think about how you're building,
So
how you're building value. Yeah.
You were saying that to close, one of the things you want to do is ask me about advice to the future.
Yeah. Basically, one of my questions is, I am a 18-year-old that's just thinking of going in geology, or I've just graduated.
Or I am already working.
Correct.
Or I am near the end of my career. What do I do?
Yeah, what are the opportunities? Oil and gas is moving towards clean energy. They're talking about less money. They're talking about...
So, go into business.
Right. Okay.
The opportunity is, as opposed to working for somebody, yeah, you get a nice salary, you get a nice pension at the end of the day if you're lucky.
Right.
But will you get the opportunity to do what I've done?
Yeah.
This real estate development is one small one. We own and started the eco resort in Tobago called Footprints, which was 65 acres.
Wow.
It's now still nearly 40 acres.
Okay.
And that's worth $20 million.
Right. Right. So
invest.
Invest.
You just can't think of how to work for somebody for the rest of my life.
Looking for someone. So one of the other questions that came up with Dr. Allen, Dr. Neil Allen, we talked about most importantly, so the biggest cadre of professionals we have now are people who have studied, BScs, master's degrees, and are frustrated because they cannot find a role in something that what you're saying applies to them as well, right?
Yeah, they can't find a job, else. Find something else, or go and
create another opportunity.
Create your own opportunities.
Yeah. So
start your own business.
So this has been
consult.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just gonna look back through my questions here.
What did you miss?
You touched everything. I think this has been an education in itself. Let
me also, before we close, I only not did reports. I did maps.
Right.
I did the first geologic tectonic map, which I published in 1984. Robertson Research published it.
Right.
Then I did an update it 20 years later, which I published.
Right.
I Wrote the book on the petroleum geology, which I published.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm just scrolling through some stuff in my mind right now, and I would say one of the questions that I have is basically you started off in academia, you moved into industry, and then you moved into your own business.
right.
And that could be a relatively good summary. I would say one of the questions I would have for me is that if you could do one thing today, right, to change how we as the Trinidadian energy industry looks at data, raw data, what would you change? Because
Use whatever you have,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Use whatever you have.
Right.
Because geology doesn't rely on data alone, you know.
Okay.
Geology relies on what is up here.
Your imagination.
No, what you've
Interpretation.
learned, plate tectonics.
Mhm.
On the basis of plate tectonics, I predicted 30 years ago that the Guyana-Suriname basin would be a huge oil play. I went there. Exxon was about to drill the first well,
Mhm.
and the APG asked me to come, and I went to Peru and gave lectures there. I went to Guyana and gave lectures there. I went to Suriname and gave lectures there, and I was telling them the same thing then.
Okay.
And I asked the Exxon guy, well, what do you think? He said, look, I'm an operations geologist. I don't know anything about this. You know, they had not drilled the first well yet.
Right.
And one of the guys in the Ministry of Energy in Guyana, I don't remember his name, tall, big guy.
Mhm.
He got up and he said, this man has been saying this for the last 10 years. So you can use basic geology
To build
Right.
a story.
to find the prospects.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
The data after you make a discovery, people don't deal with that, you know. They take that as given. They don't know anything about the source rock.
Um,
You understand?
I understand what you're saying.
They look at the reservoirs.
Right. Right. The gross depositional environment.
One of the things that our geochemical work, I analyzed 140 oils
Mhm.
throughout the entire country. And I did the petroleum geochemistry at Trinidad and Tobago.
Right. Understood.
I was not a geochemist, but I used the geochemical experts.
Right. To produce the reports, and you can pull these stories
And to
together.
use that now to predict the deep reservoirs, the evaporative fractionation. The geochemistry was saying that this is fractionated oil. The deeper reservoirs that have trapped oil, drill deep.
Right. So I think one of the most important lessons that I think I'm getting out of this conversation is that it is not locked up in the companies. It is not locked up in the data. It's in here.
It's in your brain, yeah.
And how you apply what you learned.
Yeah.
And what is the most important thing in our industry is interpretation. That's where your value is.
Yeah.
Your value is your
You're a
imagination,
geologist, your exploration
your
geologist.
creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be
Look at analogs.
Yeah. Yeah. How quickly, how much can you analyze, pull together, investigate, apply, and create?
Yeah.
Dr. Persad, one thing I'm curious about, I know as a geologist, I believe we all have inner artists because we try to visualize things in the subsurface. We try to imagine things in 3D, right? So is that what fed into your passion?
It was the other way around. I always wanted to be an artist from day one. And my knowledge of art helped me visualize in 3D. In the 80s and 90s, Exxon started sending their geologists to art school to study 3D. Frankie was one of them. Wilson Ali was one. Well, Trintalk or Tesoros and them.
Part of our course was engineering drawing. Until you like you had to have that TV background. You had to have that kind of skill.
So you were saying that back in the days, you had to draw it
You
by
had to draw the
hand.
points. And then
No,
you
I
could
want to
build
tell
the
you,
contours, yeah.
it's better you do that. If you do that, than sit down and let the computer generate maps for you.
Correct.
Because you listening to what
It's interpreting for you.
some program somebody did, and it's not coming out of your head.
Yeah.
It's not what you understand.
Yes. So
So
As long as you put in, that's what it can be.
garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. So now digital is good in a way, but we always need the human factor to fix it.
yeah, and I think so that is
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Persad, for giving us some of your time
You're very welcome.
on a Saturday. It has been educational.
Sorry.
Yeah, we have to apologize. Thank you for your time.
I forgot.
We really appreciate
when
it.
you called this morning.
But we will say, Dr. Persad, thank you very much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
It has been good just to, as I said, capture your journey, and understand your journey, the birth of the GSTT, the organization that you represent now, and get an idea of where things can go, where things could go, and I mean, most important, lesson to those who are out there, young professionals.
They can take it.
Everything is up there. Right? The data is one thing, the companies are one thing, but you are the master of your destiny.
Your own destiny.
Your own
Correct.
So,
well said.
thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to more cooperation. Thanks for watching GSTT Energy Beginnings and Legends. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And keep in touch at the GSTT on Instagram and the Geological Society of Trinidad and Tobago on Facebook. Catch issues of the Hammer newsletter on our website at thegSTT.org, and look out for more episodes of GSTT Energy Beginnings and Legends, celebrating our geological foundation and future, coming soon.